Hello, we're so happy to have you guys joining us for this fifth masterclass. And I'm so excited to have my friend Debra Prinzing joining us. And Robin, is it Anne Avni from Bloom Imprint. And they have created this masterful book of beautiful creative spaces. So we're going to in and talk about that. I have the book right here, which I did read the entire thing cover to cover, Debra. So
I'm impressed when you told me that you were taking your time with a cup of tea every few days reading one. That's awesome. They're short stories.
I kind of binged towards the ends, but I really did want to read the entire thing because I feel like I wanted to enjoy how much time and effort you guys put into this. And it was just like with a lot of love. So I am always impressed when I see people putting like their skills and their talents to work, and to have like a printed project of what you've actually done is truly masterful. Would you mind, like, I don't know if everybody in our audience here is, and I think people will be joining us as this goes on, and we're also recording it. So
sure.
Please forgive me if I bounce around a bit, but I wanted just to jump right in and get started. So if you wouldn't mind, would you mind telling our users just a little bit about like your background and who you are and why, what we're going to be talking about today?
Sure. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Debra Prinzing, founder of Slow Flower Society and partner with my good friend, Robin Avni, who's on the screen here in Bloom Imprint, which is sort of a culmination for both of us of lifelong careers in media and communications. And for me, I've worked in newspapers and magazines and always loved feature writing and storytelling. And that kind of led to home and garden writing. And then kind of the next extension was falling down the rabbit hole of flower farming and floral design. And so for about the last 10 to 12 years, I've been almost exclusively writing about mostly women entrepreneurs who are starting small businesses around flowers, either growing or designing.
Yeah. And I found that as like such a common theme. I mean, I noticed that there were so many entrepreneurs or academics that were featured in this book, and that they kind of all gave up their like careers to enter into this floral industry, which to me is like, this is where my passion lies. And so it's not such a hard step, but like there's some people that gave up their whole careers, like following for their doctorate just to be involved in like plants. And so I bet you met with and interviewed so many lovely characters. Like, just, can you explain that process?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, when Robin and I started Bloom Imprint, we wanted this to be a boutique lifestyle book publishing company, but with our focus is on producing books by and about Slow Flowers members. And I know we'll talk a little bit about Slow Flowers as a society, but basically it's, people who are involved in the mission of promoting domestic floral agriculture and sustainable floral design. And so we put out a call for participants, and I talk a little bit about that process, but in the end, we ended up featuring 37 creatives in Where We Bloom.
Yeah.
And they do range through all facets of floral design. We have studio florists, retail florists. We have people who are growers, and somewhere in between, some people who have like mobile pop-ups and, they're kind of doing it as a side hustle. But the thread that you talked about, Corrine, is really, it is really interesting that people do tend to find their floral career after leaving another profession. I don't know. Are you finding that with a lot of your
I found
members?
it such a leap of faith sometimes. And I feel like that's what any project is even as far as getting started and like writing about flowers, it's like trying to figure out who your audience is going to be there. Did you always like have a passion for writing, or like how did you fall into flowers? Like, what is your story, Debra?
Well, my undergraduate degree is in textile design and clothing and textiles, which is back in the day was called home economics for those of you who are of a certain age. But I always wanted to be in design, and I really wanted to be a fashion journalist. And so I started working at um, my college newspaper, and I was writing about anything that like they wanted me to write about. So it might have been like the Trek meet or, the art society. It was the drama or whatever. It was any topic. I had to learn how to talk to people, get their stories and translate it into paper. So that, fast forward, my senior year in college, I got to go to Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. And all the other students that I was with were, studying fashion design or retail merchandising. And there was a program called advertising and communications that I fell into. And I had a class um, from a woman named Anne Bernard, who taught me magazine journalism. And that just kind of opened the doors of like this creative combination. And Robin, my partner, is always saying the best storytelling is a combination of visual and verbal. And for me, women's magazines really depicted that. And so, of course, I was only about 21. And so I went to work for 17 magazine. And so I was just like barely older than the readers. But that really hooked me on feature writing and magazines. And I've kind of had a connection to writing about design ever since. And so when I was older and had gone to graduate school and was a newspaper reporter at a business publication, I wrote about the design oriented businesses like architecture, retail, hospitality, advertising and graphic design, media. Um, Sadly, this was in the late 80s, early 90s, and I called it the chick beat because I was the only female on the staff. And thank God I wasn't writing about, Boeing or, shipping or something, like that. I was still in the creative fields, reporting on what, what I was excited about. So
Yeah.
from that, basically fell into flowers by being a gardener and realizing writing what you know and what you love is so much more interesting than writing about .coms and CEOs.
Yeah.
And I think that's what draws a lot of us to this profession.
Well, and it's so fun because I find that a lot of the people that you had contributing are just like their words, and Robin really elegantly displays them throughout, because whenever there was like something that I thought was just so poignant or just such a beautiful way, it was like standout text on the page that was really like something very profound. But I thought my thought was a lot of the writers, and even in the beautiful foreword, they just say things so differently. Like a florist, I just think has such a beautiful way that they look at the world and the way that they are able to communicate that. And even the visual pictures in here are just absolutely stunning of where people find their creative spaces. So it's just like a lovely combination to see those things. And when you're talking about your passion, I guess it does really shine through, because when you don't know these subject matters, it's not nearly as interesting, to probably write about.
Yeah, I mean, I can pull up a few photos on the screen if you want to share them and show a sneak peek, or do you want to wait till a little bit later on?
Oh, no, please. Like, I'd love just to kind of dive in, because I
Okay.
think this is all about like the creative process. I'm sure that a lot of this writing does energize you too. So as you're like getting new
Yeah.
ideas and fueling like the stages of the book.
Yeah, let me pull it up, and maybe Robin can just talk a little bit about what you're describing of like Robin has this ability to look at a whole manuscript and pluck out the choice morsels of what we call pull quotes. So I don't know
Yeah.
if that's something, Robin, that you want to address.
Well, it's a good partnership because we feed off of each other in that way. But once you pull some stuff up, Deborah, yeah, that'll be great.
Let's start sharing from the current slide, just to talk a little bit about our business, Bloom Imprint, which we started last year. It's really great to start a new business during a pandemic. Right?
I commend you, it's like, this is
Well,
pretty exciting.
yeah, we found that we both had worked on many other projects and we really liked working together. So I mentioned some of this before about how we want to really focus on the Slow Flowers lifestyle. And when we're putting together a book, we work with creatives. And so in this case, while we were getting the project started, we also decided to do our own book. And that's what happened with Where We Bloom. Let me just rush forward to that. Okay, oops, there we go. So this
And
was,
you have a lot of books that you have in the works right now.
yeah, we can talk about it. But this is kind of where we start. So where we started with where we bloom was looking at every creative is inspired by their environment. Some people don't have, they might just have a small laundry room, or they might have their kitchen. But regardless, that's sort of the vessel in which they create their work. And so that was what drew us to this project. Robin, do you want to add anything else about this?
Well, I think that also, there's a reference, Deborah, you've always been influenced by space, and so have I. I mean, several years ago, you wrote a book about the she shed before there was a she shed movement.
I was
And
just going to show that right here on the screen.
yeah, and that inspired us, because now we see flower design, or floral design and floral growing moving into this niche in popular culture. Debra actually referred to it in one of her insight trends last year. What did we call it? What did you call it, Debra? Star power?
Yeah.
Where
I mean, it's sort of like elevating to the kind of popular culture, fashion, and kind of celebrity level of gardening being chic.
Well, and it's really, people want to experience something. So it's.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I got off track.
I would say, Debra, also, it was fueled by the whole home, because of COVID and the pandemic. People were fueled to not only grow vegetables, but also flowers, because that was their.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that we're really fascinated by this trend that kind of validated our hunch, and that is that 16 million new people entered gardening during COVID. And more than 50% of them were men. And so while we don't think our target audience is male for this book, we are developing some other books that are. But, the whole idea that gardening became universal. And so there's more interest in gardening and floral design. I just threw this up here because it's sort of shows how we build the book, and how you were talking about the pull quotes and the headlines and all. This is sort of, we call it our book map. And so Robin would create this sort of roadmap for pulling the book together and seeing, what photos what would the flow be? What would be the natural way to walk people through the book? Because as I said, we have a lot of diversity, and we didn't want to, originally I said, oh, let's put all the flower farmers in one chapter, and let's put all the retail florists in one chapter. And Robin nixed that idea immediately. And she said, let's look for the organic, natural flow of pacing, big stories mixed with short stories, large photos mixed with smaller galleries. So this sort of in showing a work in progress. And then we got to something like this, which is the opening story. And I know some of your questions that your members asked about relating to efficient use of space. We can touch on that a little bit.
Well, I just think it's fabulous. I mean, how interesting was this? And I imagine that, were there a lot of people that submitted that you didn't include in the book, just from a space standpoint, or did you try to squeeze all the people that you wanted to into this book?
You know what? We tried to share the love with everybody who took the time to submit. And that might be, in some cases, just one photo and a tinier story, because we wanted it to be as inclusive as possible. It is sort of an indirect member benefit of being part of the Slow Flower Society, is to be featured in our books. Not every book and not every person, but we wanted to leave that door open. We also, liked the mix. Like, as this particular designer, she's a farmer florist. She converted this, where these beautiful French doors are, it was just like where the tractors were stored. And she had this idea of enclosing it, putting in these double French doors, and you can see the awning there. It's retracted, but when she can pull it out, then she can have workshops out there. I love the way she's decorated the inside with this horizontal shiplap siding. And one of the tips that Lori, the owner, shared with us is that all of the tables are on wheels. And I know a lot of designers do that so that they can have a multi-purpose space. And maybe it's a production table, but then it's it's a farm to table dinner kind of table, and or maybe it's a workshop table. So we're kind of
Yeah, I
impressed with
noticed
that.
that a lot of these workshops and workspaces were just had so many different elements combined, and just to see how creative people can get with their spaces or lack of space for that much is just like, that's probably one of the most interesting things about it, is you use what you got and like how
Mhm.
you put it together. How long did it take to compile all of the images for this book?
We put the call out for last October. We moved pretty quickly, and that's one reason why we did it together. So we didn't have to like manage an author. I wrote it, Robin art directed it, and we went to print at the end of March. So really, in less than 6 months was I would kind of
Yeah,
I guess we should congratulate ourselves for that.
It's a quick turnaround, but we're also part of our brand and our belief. We print locally. We print in the States. We don't send to China and or out of the country. And as a result, that offers us a quicker turnaround. When we're ready, we can print right away.
Did
Yeah,
you
I
learn?
mean,
Oh, sorry, go
we
ahead.
were making corrections up until like the last minute the thing went out of our hands. So yeah, I'm sorry,
I
go
know
ahead.
that's always my fear. Whenever I'm printing anything, I'm like, oh my gosh, you can only print once, so you got to get it right the first time.
Well,
Did
we
you
have
learn anything?
copy editors and we have proofing, and I'm sure something still got through even after all that.
Yeah, we won't point out anything if we see it. No, isn't that the worst?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you learn anything new? So I know that Robin, you've been in publishing too for like quite some time, and like, I don't know combined how many books you guys have both published, but
I'll try to find that slide.
did you learn anything like about each other or yourselves during this like design process?
I think we should answer that separately. Robin, you go first. I know well, maybe she's on mute. I learned how valuable it is to have a collaborator. And I've had collaborators before, and I know a lot of people have done collaborations. They don't always work out. And
Yeah.
we are really committed to communicating all the time about, how we feel about, particular steps. And it's really a strength of Robin's to do this. She's always checking in with me to make sure that I feel good about something, and even I witness her doing this with our authors. So we'll present a concept, and then she'll really have to kind of coax their response out of them. And I think it's just a trait as how women do business. I don't want to male bash, but I want to just say we're really fortunate that that's a value that we have about just inclusivity and transparency.
Communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if you guys kind of are speaking the
Communication.
same language.
Exactly. And also what I'd say is Debra and I have known each other for almost 15 years. So we've been colleagues over this time. And we also have our own areas where we have our expertise in, right? So it's a nice melding of our skills. But I think what I'd also learned about Debra is, and you all may know this if you've ever met her, she's a very generous and giving person, and I totally appreciate that.
Yeah,
We
but
all need this.
it's exciting to have this opportunity to work with really talented people. I wanted to share this slide because I know you had some questions just about the book process for people who are listening who are interested.
Yeah. Well, I mean, gosh, what kind of supportive people do you need to bring in other than you and Robin? Who are the key like contributors to getting a book like this made? If anybody out there that is wanting to actually sit down and write a book, like what would you say the processes are, or who do they need to know or have?
You want to start with that, Robin?
Yeah, and Debra, what I'd also offer is that we have a little guide that we can send to help people get their thoughts down that we did for Flervana, and we're happy to share with you to put out there.
I'll send it. Yeah, I'll make sure that Corrine has it. Yeah.
But one of the things is that, so there's a lot that goes in. I mean, it's in this case, when we work with an author, we all, it's not just Debra and me, so it's the author that we're working with on form and outline and what their story is. But we also need to make sure we've got good photography, as you mentioned in the book that we have, but also in all of these other books we're working on, we're looking at working with and getting good photography to highlight the story. As Debra said, visual, verbal, it works together.
Let's just say
Um,
that Robin's favorite thing that anyone can do for her, we'll call out Holly Chappell in this, is to give Robin access to their Dropbox folder and let her go wild with like looking through photos. And if any of you know Holly Chappell, you know the girl's got like tens of thousands of photos that she's never even published. And
Yeah.
I would say that a lot of people, for a starting point, it's helpful to know what you have and give yourself a little audit of what photos you have that you own and or have rights to, and also what you've already written. Like, have you written blog posts, or have you done a workshop and have a handout, or maybe you've done a newsletter article. Like, all of that we believe can be repurposed, so it's not as overwhelming then to say, oh my God, I'm starting with a blank slate. And
right.
that's an audit, that we call that an audit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're also working with a copy editor. So after the story gets written, there's content editing, which Debra and I will do. And then there's a copy editor who will check all your, dotted I's and semicolons.
Right.
And then we have an image editor who will help, adjust some of our images. Then we also have a graphic designer who we work with, who does some of the design. I do some of it, but in Where We Bloom, there was a great graphic designer we work with, Jenny Diaz, and we work together on pulling that all together. I do the photo editing, so we don't need to hire a photo editor. But then you go and you have a printer and, distribution and all those other things. So I hope that gives a little highlight. Does that answer
No,
it?
I think it's an amazing process. It's just, and to churn out a multiple books each year is like quite like, I don't even know how you put a timeline like that together.
Well, talk
And
to
just
us
kind
at the end of the year. So what
yeah.
happened was, when we were working on Where We Bloom, kind of as our initial project, we were also on a parallel track working with all these other authors that you see on the screen. And we have a staggered release date, some for this fall and then some for spring of 2022. And we're already kind of in negotiations with people we want to do books with in the fall of 2022. So, if we could have like 4 to 6 new titles every year, I think we'd be happy. But we're getting our systems in place, and really grateful for these authors who want to work with us, when in many cases they could be working with a much bigger publisher, but they value relationships and kind of collaboration as well, because it is a team approach. That's one thing that Rob and I often hear her say to authors is like, if you're with a bigger operation, sometimes the author just hands over this manuscript and this batch of photos, and then you don't see anything or hear anything for the next 12 months until your book comes out. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but like, it's a pretty lonely process. And so we are constantly having Zoom meetings with people and checking in on the direction, and giving people little assignments, so that they don't feel like the entire manuscript has to be handled in 1 month. It's all kind of staggered and a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, I don't know very many people who say, I want to put together a publishing company and this is what we're going to do. So, I think that takes a lot of courage, and like to look out there or what's missing in the market, and to come to that like realization, or to get together. I mean, how did this come to be? Did you guys we're out to dinner one day and we're like, hey, we should do this thing? Like, tell me about that initial start of like creating a business.
Okay. Do you
Like
want to
this.
know the real story?
Yes.
Well, the story is that but Debra had a book that we did with what was then Florist Review, which has since been sold, and it was called Slow Flowers Journal. And but then things changed when Florist Review got sold, and they weren't going to focus on the slow flowers, which is fine. And Deborah and I enjoyed working on that book, and we said to ourselves, well, we could do this. I mean, we did this, so why not do it ourselves, right? So that's kind of how it came about. And then before we know it, Deborah's like, we should talk to so and so. We should talk to so and so. And before we know it, we had like 5 authors lined up, and we're working on putting this book out. And there you had it. We had a whole, what we call a catalog in the book industry. And then
Okay.
when we launched with a catalog, distributors were like, hey, we'll distribute your books. So it kind of was kind of very organic, but with intent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've taken a glance through Deborah's book. I haven't read the first one cover to cover like I did this one, but how challenging was it to create 52 arrangements for each week out of the year? Like, I think our florist, I think most of us do this because we do weddings and we have a wedding almost every week, but like, this is original content. So like, tell me about that
Oh,
creative
yeah.
process.
Let me show you a little bit about that book. So that basically you're talking about the book Slow Flowers, which
Okay.
came out. Is that the one you're talking about? The one with the 52 weeks of arrangements?
Yes. I'm sorry if
Oh.
it wasn't the same one that you guys worked on together.
Oh no, we have 2 books with the title in it, with the title Slow Flowers. So that is
Okay.
that's confusing, but I'll start here. So basically this is the book you're talking about, Corrine, and I it's a long story, but I was working on a book trying to get it sold in the marketplace about flower farming, and it ended up coming out we called it the 50 Mile Bouquet. And then when I was trying to sell that book, I couldn't get any publisher interested. This was over 10 years ago. And I see a few people on the call who remember me back then, including, gotta give a shout out to Polly Hutchison. She remembers that when this was happening. And so I had a publisher in New York City um, say, it's fine if you live in Santa Barbara, you can have flowers every month of the year. But otherwise, that's just a fringe topic, and it's not relevant. And I was so mad about that. I thought I'll show her. And this was my combination. I started in fall of 2011 making a bouquet every week for a year, or an arrangement just from my garden. And I'm a gardener. I'm not trying to be a florist. So as you can see, this is really just inspired by things that I grew, or things that I was able to source from the local flower farming scene that was really emerging in Seattle at the time. And so this was one of my first arrangements that I did. And then as the book evolved, it was going to be a blog series, but eventually it got picked up as a book. I just had a little essay, and then the ingredients, and something about the vessel. And it really became an excuse to buy a lot of vintage vases, and to tell my husband that it was for the cause of the book. As you can see, this is a vintage trophy from, um, actually, this one is from a, a floral contest in Hollywood in 1907. So I bought that off of eBay, or 1917. But then I
It's
had,
a good year.
things like this.
Yeah, beautiful. So this really segued into creating like the slow flowers movement in your like love for locally grown flowers.
Yes, it did. I mean, I didn't really have a plan. And when Robin generously says we've done things organically, that's sort of my whole life. I
Yeah.
think I think like a journalist, not like a business person. But after the Slow Flowers book came out, and I was doing a lot of talks at garden clubs or flower and garden shows, like local retail garden centers, just whatever you do to promote a book. People kept saying to me, I love this idea. I want to support local flower farmers, and I want to find florists who are buying from local farmers. How do I find those people? And for about a year, I said, someone should start a directory. And then eventually I got to the point, you've all probably been in this spot before, where you think, if I don't do this, someone else will, and then I'll be really bummed. So I started Slow Flowers basically as a directory. And when I started it in 2014, we're coming up on, May, right? Mother's Day was our anniversary. What would that be? Our 8-year anniversary. It's hard to believe.
Okay.
We just started using that as kind of a term to describe this whole movement of caring about local flower sourcing, seasonal flower sourcing, the growing of it and the design. And so that kind of birthed a whole organization.
Well, it really did. And the whole farm to table, I think, revolution was kind of started from this whole idea, or at least it was all kind of piggybacking on this, like go to a restaurant and order farm to table. But if you can get flowers that are locally sourced and locally grown, like I feel like it's such a unique thing. And I think so many farmers or florist farmers have started because your group especially has given them the confidence to say, hey, there's other people that you can lean on to ask questions, because it's just like there's not really any manual.
Yeah, that's
Right.
a really good point. I wanted to share a a statistic that I just am so excited. Can you see that on the screen?
No.
Oh,
I don't
okay,
think
good.
so.
I'll find it. So basically, I know, and I know that people involved in our community know this anecdotally, that there is an increased interest in flower sourcing in the floral industries just in the last 10 years. We've seen it, the increase. We've seen the explosion of people wanting to grow flowers and florists who are wanting to become farmer florists, who are both have a design business and a growing business. And so recently I just worked with the National Gardening Survey to ask this question of consumers about what value do you put on sourcing domestically and locally? And so these numbers were just published about a month ago, but they found that 58% of Americans say buying local flowers is very or somewhat important. And then 57% say buying domestic flowers is very or somewhat important. And so and we invested in supporting this research. It was an omnibus, scientifically accurate consumer study of 2,500 households. And so now we have a baseline, and I take encouragement from this because honestly, I didn't know what the responses were going to be. And so next year, when those questions are asked again, I would hope to see a little bit of an increase in that. And I feel like florists, and especially who are trying to maybe adopt this practice, they can take comfort and encouragement that they're on the right path, and I'm not an all or nothing kind of person. I feel like it's there's baby steps to just try working with a local flower farm, maybe just for one specific crop, like maybe do a zinnia
Yeah.
program or something like that, and see how that goes. And then do a dahlia program, and then maybe do something at the holidays with, local, forage greens or whatever, but just brand it as local to your community. And I can guarantee you consumers will respond.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an area of interest. I'm always looking for our florists, and maybe we'll put out a survey and say how many of you would like to know the different farmer florists or in your area that you could source,
Oh
products
yeah,
from.
we would love to support you in that. That's a wonderful idea. I mean,
Yeah,
part
I
of
think
this,
that
just the whole industry is kind of getting redefined. And so it's you have to do a little legwork to get those answers.
yeah, I think that the communication could really be enhanced, and a lot of farmer florists could probably benefit from the sales of some of these flowers in their local communities. So you have a society of those florist farmers that are a part of Slow Flowers community. Is this open to anybody? Could our customers join this if they would like?
Absolutely.
Or
Absolutely. And we let me just show you on the screen. I'll get one more share here. I guess my slides are a little out of order, guys. Sorry.
oh no, I like that you're doing slides. It's like something visual to look at. No
Show don't
pressure on
tell,
us,
right?
but yeah.
Um,
Okay,
so
this is
this is
great.
this is our membership. We have 880 members who basically pay a fee to join, either $99 as a standard member and $249 as a premium member. And the premium members get a lot more benefits, and I'll talk about that. But within that, you can see how people are self-identifying, and many people are in more than one category. So the 566 members describe themselves as flower farmers. Well, then you see 445 designed for weddings and events. So some of them are like Polly, where they're growing but they're also doing weddings and events. So this kind of shows the diversity of the membership. And then these are some of the benefits when you join. It's really a marketing platform and a community. So while the directory is a really cool benefit, we're not like the Knot or one of those wedding wire directories where you pay to be on a directory because you're generating leads. We don't have that kind of scale the way a large wedding referral business does, but it's more about, here are the tools to brand yourself around local, seasonal, and sustainable, and use our tools like all of our infographics and our logo and our reports and all of our content, our weekly podcast, to get involved and align yourself with that. So
yeah, and like I'm sure they're all sharing information, and just having someone that's in that like-minded or even selling the same crop. It's like, hey, we had to deal with this last year. You're always learning from other people, and we find our users are doing the same thing as well. It's like everybody is a teacher, but they're also a student. So I think it's just so smart.
I agree. And I wanted to show this slide which is basically what consumers see when they come to slowflowers.com. And I thought you would like this, Corrine, because Jessica Hall is on here from Harmony Harvest, and she's a details client as well.
Awesome.
I would put her in the category of farmer florist, because she's growing, but she's also, doing design,
Well, it's incredible.
services.
And I'm so in awe of people that can grow their own flowers and include them in their bouquet work and so forth. I think it's just so courageous. I'd be worried about those popping up at just the right time to use for that wedding, and just what, that anxiety is like a whole other level, I'm sure.
I think a lot of it boils down to communication and managing expectations of the client.
Sure.
I'm learning from a lot of our members that that's been a shift, and COVID kind of helped accelerate that, because there was this disruption in the supply chain. So last year, and I'm sure you've heard this too, like people were just excited to get flowers. They couldn't be really specific even on variety, maybe on palette, and so that actually kind of has helped change the expectations of the customer. Like, okay, we're going to give you something beautiful, and it's going to be in season, and we just harvested it, and it'll probably be in your palette, but we can't be more specific than that, because Mother Nature is, out of control.
And I'm sure all those farmer florists did really well, because I feel like with the lack of products coming out of South America probably really boosted their business, or even blurred the lines, and maybe they got into some other area that they weren't even really focused on prior to the pandemic at all, just having to pivot or shift.
I think so. I think we saw that more florists were starting to experiment with growing some of their, just whatever, maybe just roses, or, maybe foliages, like something that they could use that would make them sort of different than the competition. And we're also, now that, we've been following this trend for a while, but farmers are increasingly interested in design, because they see it as a value add, where they're getting a higher price per stem when they're offering design services on top of the product that they grow.
Yeah, well, it was like whenever I bought a bunch of vase inventory, if I could rent it multiple times, I did really well. But I can't imagine if I were actually able to grow my own tulip, how I could mark that up or sell it. And, that's extra profits in your pocket at the end of the day. So
yeah, well, I have to say, it's a challenge because you are in Florida, but we have members joining from Florida who are really pushing the envelope about what they can grow. And one is in the book, and she's in the Orlando area.
Farm gal, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Eileen Tongson, and she's just growing crazy stuff. She's growing dahlias. And, I just really admire the way she's just using all her gardening skills to develop this business. And, I don't think she calls herself a designer as much, but she does teach a lot using local flowers.
Well, I would really love to learn more about pest control or deer resistant plants that I could grow on my property, because I am fighting off the deers and the bunnies. Like, they eat all of my pretty roses. So it's I don't do well.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I got some blueberry bushes, but other than that, I don't really have too much of a green thumb. You do have a summit that is coming up. I don't know if you wanted to
Yes.
share it with our users. I'm really proud to be a lanyard sponsor of this event. So
We are really proud that Details is part of this, and we are so bummed that you can't come, but we're going to represent you very well at the summit. And let me see if I can get that slide up.
so it's happening in, I think, California. Is that where you're?
Yeah. So the Slow Flowers Summit will be our 4th year. And we had to take a year off because of COVID. I'm sorry. I keep trying to get to the right screen, but there we go. Oops. But basically, we started the Slow Flowers Summit in 2017 as an in-person celebration of American Flowers Week, which is another one of our campaigns. Like, see, every idea I have turns into a new
Yeah.
project. But the summit I call it the TED Talk for flower lovers. And it started as 1 day. Now it's 2.5 days. So it's like, keeps growing. This will take place thanks to taking a year off and having a fabulous venue, Filoli, which is a historic home and garden just outside of San Francisco. We're able to have an all outdoor conference, and it's going to be on June 28th and 29th. Our keynote speaker is Susan McCleary, who you see in the top left-hand corner here. And we also have Max Gill, who you see here, and then really excellent, panelists like these. Emily, Molly, and Kelly are all presenting a panel called Sustainable Farming X Floral Design. And they're going to talk about how sustainable farming practices influences their design aesthetic, because they're all farmer florists. We have Abra Lee on the lower left-hand corner here. She is going to do a wonderful talk on the history of the Black American florist based on her research that she's been doing for a couple years for a book that will come out, I think, next year by Workman Press. So Abra's going to really open up all of her archives of historical photos and historical stories. And I'm really excited about that. It's a brand new talk she's developing just for us. Pilar Zuniga, who you see here on the bottom, she owns Gorgeous and Green in Berkeley. And she is literally the very first florist I ever knew of who was advocating for foam-free design about 10 years ago. And she's a real pioneer in the green, just the green movement in the Bay Area. So, and she's a great designer. So she's going to be talking about building a sustainable based business. And then we have an artist, Lorene Edwards Faulkner, and an author, Jennifer Jewell, who are going to sort of get us outside of the floral space into gardening and the environment, and kind of maybe challenge us in new ways. And so it's not quite it's not a floral design workshop per se, but people will be able to get their hands on flowers because we're going to do a floral takeover, much like this one here you see on the right, we did in the Twin Cities 2 years ago. We've been invited by Filoli to do design installations in all 18 rooms of this mansion for photography. And Sue McCleary is going to lead that. And so that's, everybody's going to get their hands on flowers, which is fun. These are photos from past conferences. We always have farm tours. We have design demos and, large scale installation projects. We have—
Are those the sustainable flowers like too? Is that design all like without foam?
Yes.
Or did that have foam?
The previous
and that
one,
I find
this was all
this
was all designed with foam-free techniques, and was taught by Toby Nelson, who is a real pioneer in sustainable floristry.
Yeah.
And
so
also
challenging to do that too,
I know.
it's just, it's so important, but then it's just, to get things to last. So I always love learning those techniques and just ways to do things that you hadn't thought of before. And
right. And that what Sue McCleary is going to do is a vertical large scale installation showing her techniques at Filoli. And, when it's in that heat of California weather, it's going to be a challenge. And so we're going to talk about like what are the tricks to hydrate? Yeah, for sure. All of the floral product that we use is always donated or procured from local farms. These are some of the past year's events. We always have some kind of wonderful meal. We go on tours. We have a guy named Mud Baron who is returning to the summit. He does a whole Flowers on Your Head series, which some people maybe have seen on
Oh,
Instagram.
yeah, I think I
That's
saw him at SAF a couple years ago.
That's right. Yeah. So he's backed by popular demand. And yeah, so that's coming up. It's a month out. We haven't closed ticket sales, but we will pretty soon just because of capacity. But because
Okay.
of relaxed, COVID compliance rules, we're feeling like everyone will be wearing a mask, but we'll be outdoors. So
Yeah. How many guests are you up to, or do you think you could max out at?
we're at about 120 right now. We'll probably only go 10 more. We were originally planned for 150, but I just think that there's a little bit of a comfort level. So we're not
Yeah.
actively promoting we have not actively promoted ticket sales since COVID hit, basically. And people keep registering, and it's kind of amazing. But I think there's a little bit of a pent up demand. If you're vaccinated, you want to go do something. And that's what we're kind of seeing right
Do you
now.
find that a lot of the attendees are going to be from California, or do you have people flying in from all over to attend?
We have people coming from across the US, and the Canadians cannot get in. So that's kind of a bummer. We have members in Canada, but the border just hasn't opened up. But I would say more than 50% of the attendees this time around are in the three Western states: Oregon, Washington, and California. People who can drive, rather than fly. But we have, I mean, Sue McCleary is coming from Michigan. Molly Culver, one of our speakers, is coming from New York. So we're definitely, we've got somebody coming from Florida, Corrine. So,
I know. I wish I wasn't. I wish I could go, because I'm so amped to get out of the state here and see.
Well, we'll get you next year. Yeah.
Flowers. I know. Yeah, we'll have to do that. So we had a contest that we had running during this whole time to promote Where We Bloom, and also just seeing people's creative spaces. And it was fun. We had a few people participate, not quite as many as we would have liked, but we did do some giveaways and some books. I didn't know if I can show those now or share my
I'd love
screen.
to do the big reveal.
Yeah, let's see. And look, so we were giving away some free subscriptions, and also Debra's book, Debra and Robin's book. And so of course we always do a tie for third place, because we can never have like a real like underdog or real loser. So we wanted to make sure everybody wins. But Suat Farm and Robin Hollow both win third place. And they're going to get a month free subscription and a copy of Debra's book. So
And I just have to jump in and say, I have personally been to both of these spaces, and they are, I would spend hours, I'm happy to spend hours playing with flowers in both of these spaces, both Sarah's and Polly's. So that's exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. We have all kinds of oils always running in our like smelling things. And do you find that there's anything creative that you saw that was happening in each of the spaces? Did it always like hit on the five senses, or was there any common thread between any of the people in your book that you saw?
Well, I think Robin should answer her favorite little, like decorating and design tip, and I'll share my favorite one. Can you say just one, Robin?
Well, there's so many, but I'd have to say that I'm so impressed with the storage capacity and shelving that is used in all of these spaces, and how beautiful they all look. And I don't think it was just for the photo shoot. I think that that's how people keep. I'm looking at Polly's space right behind her on the screen, and I'm like, wow, look at that shelving. So there's all this great storage and innovative ways for storage, which is one of my favorite features. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was obsessed with that Get Organized over the summer. So I love organized spaces.
And I think COVID got us all like to get our home improvement projects going, or garden improvement projects. You mentioned the senses. There were many people who talked about the music and the fragrance that they, intentionally or unintentionally, they might play music, but then they're just bringing herbs and bringing, lavender into their space. There was this sort of thread that wove through the book about how it is entering your own creative space does have almost like a visceral reaction that sort of allows you to be more creative and to kind of, get lost in the flowers. And a lot of people talked about music for sure, but also other elements like really good windows that let in really good light, or the view
Oh,
that you're inspired by looking out the window. So I do think it is it includes all of the senses. It just seems to be something that was a common thread.
yeah, I have to say that's very true. Um, all right, the second place, oh, is it not gonna let me change? There we go, is Hello Lucy Blooms. And we thought that this was very, like, this reminds us of like a New York City, where everything is there, but like, the design room is just kind of all flowers everywhere.
Love the
So
brick wall. Love the brick wall and the wood floor.
I want that
yeah.
table. I want that table.
Did you find that I read that there were so many families that got into these spaces, and it was really, I thought, a very family oriented type of spaces. Did you find that as prevalent as I did, or?
Well, it's funny. We have a lot of mother-daughter teams and a couple sister teams and a husband and wife team. So it is sort of not surprising that flowers can kind of infuse into all aspects of a family life. If, maybe there's an instigator, but everyone gets swept up in it.
Yeah, for sure. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. And then our first place was back to the she shed type of idea. And we thought Chasing Flowers in Bend, this space is just phenomenal. It's like, who
Yeah.
wouldn't want to go there and just get lost in the whole tranquility of like their outdoor spaces? Like,
Beautiful.
it's just
Beautiful.
amazing. So this was really
Congratulations,
fun.
everybody. Robin, doesn't that remind you of my greenhouse?
A little bit, but twice the size, Deborah.
But I invited Robin over for a working lunch, and we squeezed one small table and two of us inside my greenhouse, and had a wonderful kind of separate workspace. But it would have been much nicer to be in something more spacious like this.
Yeah,
Oh
it's,
yeah,
it's beautiful. It's spectacular. This.
yeah,
And
I love it.
Yours is
So
lovely.
congratulations.
Oh,
We'll
you
send all.
picked some great winners. That's exciting.
Yeah, I
And
thought that was.
some people who are new to me. So I'm happy to know about them and follow them.
Oh yeah, well they'll have to follow along. They already are. So that was part of the challenge. But we love. I want to close out because I know that American Flowers Week is coming up, and that is kind of. I thought that was such a wonderful idea, just to celebrate during like the 4th of July, that whole thing. And did that come about because I guess they celebrate British Flowers Week
Yes. Do you
and
see that on the screen?
yes, I do.
Well, yeah. So British Flowers Week was started in 2013, and I happened to go to the Chelsea Flower Show 2 years later and in 15 and meet the people who created British Flowers Week. And they were so encouraging, and they were just excited to encourage me to start something similar in the US. So it's really just a social media campaign. It's June 28th to July 4th. Everyone is invited to participate at any level, from posting photos of flowers in your studio or on your farm and using the hashtag American Flowers Week, to maybe considering creating a botanical couture look that will also be, shared and used both in the media and in the floral industry. These are from last year. We're about ready to release for 2021 a bookazine, a digital magazine that we'll be sure to share with you, Corrine, and it's going to be available for free download so that people can read about the creative teams behind those looks. But we also do simple things like create a bouquet label program for local for retailers to use. This is
smart too.
This is
just to kind of get the communities to know.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
I just think it's so smart, just as another marketing technique for these retailers to encourage their customers to buy flowers during American Flowers Week, which is, generally probably a pretty slow week for flowers. So if you can uptick it, it's done so much. And to go to some of these larger like PMAs and see them promoting this too, I think is really a nod to what you've encouraged. So it's great to see.
Thanks. Yeah, this is a particular good partner of ours, a chain of 6 grocery stores in the Seattle area. they have a competition between their floral departments in across their company during American Flowers Week. So this was one of the displays that the team in their floral department created during American Flowers Week, and they did. It is a dead week for flowers, for flower sales. And Melanie Cherry, who's the floral manager, told me that they were able to document a 20% increase in sales by doing the American Flowers Week campaign. So, I mean, it's a business. We're all in the business to sell flowers. So it's definitely a smart decision. We do fun installations too, and have parties, have red, white, and blue cookies, and
Yeah.
always commission art from a US female artist. This is our
Oh.
artwork for this year. And all of this is materials free at AmericanFlowersWeek.com to download and use.
Yeah. And see, I think that just saves like florists so much time and energy as far as getting those like marketing pieces out. So I hope that people will take advantage of all of these efforts that are made by like you and Robin, just to kind of get flowers, as part of everybody's life. And I think we all need to work together as a community. It's part of the reason why we started, annually we have a Made in America campaign, because we think it's so important to buy American. So that's one of the only specials we do. And we were like, we're going to piggyback along on this like little wave of American
Let's
made.
cross promote. Let's cross promote. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
That's really cool. Well, thank you so much for having us and for your community. I just think there's some really good synergies, and we're just starting to experience and understand how we can cross promote and collaborate. And I mean, Details has been such a great supporter to Robin and me with Bloom Imprint and Where We Bloom. And you helped birth this book, Corrine. You're the first person who said, I'm in.
Yeah, no, thank you. We always try to be supportive of everything, and however we can get creatives inspired, or just another avenue for them to promote their work that we're all doing. I think it's a lovely way to help. So we're all doing our part. Thank you. It was great having you ladies on, and we'll be sure to get you a copy of this segment for the recap. And if you guys are listening, please go out and purchase Debra and Robin's book. I think it's lovely. It's such a great inspiration for you to think about what you might want to do with your creative space, just to see what other people have done. And yeah, so
awesome.
But thank you guys.
Thank you.
Derek.
Talk soon. We'll follow up with you and go make something beautiful, or grow something beautiful.
Oh, well, wish me luck. I've never had, my fig tree is not doing well. So
oh my gosh. All right. Well, you can just design something beautiful then. That's the only assignment I'll tell you.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to buy more cut flowers, and send more to my mother.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. All right. Bye guys. Have a nice day.